That's Andrew Tate in a video he posted on Twitter last Friday after he and his brother were released from a jail in Romania. I'm Angenette Levy, and welcome back to Sidebar here on Law and Crime. Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan Tate have been in jail since late last year. They are accused of human trafficking and organized crime. There are two other women who are actually accused with them. Prosecutors cannot appeal this ruling. The prosecution had wanted them to stay behind bars. Tristan Tate spoke as they were released from jail. Andrew is standing behind him.
I just want to say that the judges today made the right decision. I respect what they've done for me, and they will be vindicated in their decision because I'm an innocent man and I can't wait to prove it.
The Tates left jail as people were cheering them on. They are on house arrest until April 29th. They have not been formally indicted. On Friday, Andrew Tate posted a video on Twitter that showed him pacing back and forth in his apartment, kind of looking a little stressed. He wrote on Twitter, "Since last year, I've been in 24-hour lockdown, no yard time, pacing a 3-meter cell with zero electronics or outside contact, absolute clarity of mind, real thoughts, real plans, vivid pain. 1 hour home and I can't stand my phone. Some habits die hard. We must defeat Satan." Law and Crime has a brand new podcast series out on the DC sniper case, and you can listen to all 10 episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Journalist Tony Holt hosts a 10-part series, Chasing Ghosts, The Hunt for the DC Snipers, which takes a magnifying look at one of the most devastating killing sprees in U.S. history. You can listen to all 10 episodes now at the link in the description. Joining me to discuss the latest about Andrew Tate and his brother and this human trafficking case is Stefan Loredan. He is an attorney in Romania, and he has been following this case closely with us since the very beginning. Stefan, welcome back to Sidebar.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
I want to know what you thought, Stefan, when you heard last Friday that the appeals court had ruled that Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan and these two other women could be released from jail and then placed on house arrest.
Well, they actually been released from jail and they've been placed on house arrest like 2 or 3 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. To be honest with you, I was surprised. I didn't expect that. I knew that the prosecutor had at least 2 more arrest extensions. And I was expecting him to just go for another arrest extension and then just try to move the case to the trial. So I was completely surprised about that. But here's where it gets interesting. I think this might be a strategy because now that they are being put under house arrest, they can actually keep them for another 180 days during house arrest, right? Because the periods that they don't count the same periods, right, for the house arrest and for the arrest that they stayed in prison. So it might be the case that the prosecutor needed more time for the investigation to happen while also trying to keep them detained, right? So to not release them, because I think that's most likely what happened. Or there's another option. I think that the judge was like, okay, since you didn't provide further evidence in the case, we just have to put them under house arrest because we can't just keep them detained and in prison without further evidence, right? So I think it's either one of those two options.
Definitely. And, they can't just keep them, detained indefinitely, obviously. And the appeals court agreed with that. But you're saying in 180 days is about 6 months, give or take. So you're saying you believe, even though the prosecutors can't appeal this ruling, this was the appeals court decision, you're saying the prosecutors can seek to have Andrew Tate and his brother held on another, for another 6 months in their homes.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. The law in Romania states very clearly that the maximum number of days that the suspect can be kept under house arrest is 180 days, and that the period does not count to the period that they stayed in normal arrest in prison.
Now, Andrew Tate, he tweeted out something, after his release, and he was pacing back and forth in his apartment, walking back and forth, smoking a cigarette, talking about how basically jail had not been fun. He was in a small cell with basically no contact with the outside world. He says his phone is driving him nuts. It sounds like he said he's had a lot of time to think and come up with a plan. He's had vivid pain. What are your thoughts on that tweet that he posted? It has more than 15 million views on that video so far.
I think he didn't expect to go to prison, obviously, and to stay in jail for so long. And I think this experience will definitely change him as a personality, as a person. I think it's meant to better him, because before that, and obviously time will tell. Like this is just speculation in my personal opinion. But I think before that he had power, he had money, he had influence, but maybe his ways of doing things wasn't so orthodox, right? Like so religious. But now I think, given the fact that he's also converted to Islam and he's a Muslim, and that he had this experience in prison, being by himself for 3 months, right, without cell phones, without any distraction, I think that maybe this brought more clarity in regards to what he's going to do next with his life and how he's going to use his power. Because let's face it, right, he has some tremendous amounts of power, and I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about influence, right, and about the attention that he has on him, and he can use that for good or he can use that for bad. And let's hope that he's going to take this experience and just turn himself into a better man.
What do you see happening next? Obviously, the case will proceed in some fashion. Prosecutors, I assume, will take it to trial. It doesn't seem to me that Andrew Tate is not signaling, publicly at least, that he's going to agree to plead guilty to anything. He seems rather defiant.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, the only way in which the case will be moved to the trial is if the prosecutor has enough evidence, which I'm not sure about quite yet, right? And so I think that maybe in the next 60 days, it's either that the case will be moved to the trial or they're going to get a pre-trial conditional release, right? 'Cause they just can't keep them for so long in detainment. So in order to move the case to the trial, the prosecutor has to go forward to a preliminary chamber judge, which is a different judge than the one that ruled over so far. And he must present the case files. And if the preliminary chamber judge decides that there's enough evidence, he will move the case to the trial. So I think that the prosecutor really wants to do like one shot. He doesn't want to mess around, like just providing the case file and then they find out that there's not enough evidence and just deny his request. So I think he really wants to do one shot, and if he misses, he's pretty much done, right?
I'm kind of wondering how things work in Romania. Obviously, we know how things work in the court system in the United States. There's a procedure that has to be followed after an arraignment on the charges where a person enters a plea of usually typically not guilty at an arraignment. Then their attorneys receive the evidence that the state has, that the government has against their client, and they're able to review that evidence and see what will be presented at trial. Is it a similar procedure in Romania, or how does it work there?
Well, during the investigation phase, the law protects the prosecutor in terms of he's not obligated to show any case files to the attorneys or to anybody, right? Because it's this thing that maybe by showing the case files to the other side, to the defendants, maybe they will try to influence the witnesses. Maybe some of the statements and some of the evidence that they have can be compromised, and that's the logic behind it. I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think it's 100% fair, because you can use that on your own advantage if you are a prosecutor, right? But yeah, that's pretty much how it works in Romania. But if they are going to be sent to the trial, then they are going to receive everything, like all the documents, all the case files. I'm talking about the defendants.
So you're saying they're still in an investigative phase, despite having charged him with the crime? Because I would have thought the investigation would have already taken place. Obviously, sometimes there's still further investigation required or needed. Things evolve over time. So you're saying that we're in the investigative phase,
Yes,
and
still
that
in the investigating phase. Yeah, it's during the investigation phase right now. The next phase is the trial, of course, but it has to go through this step of the preliminary chamber judge. He has to approve, and then it goes to the trial. And if the trial starts, I actually, if it starts, of course, we don't know about that. It can actually mm, just take place for 1 to 3 years. Because again, I don't see, just like you said, I don't see Tate recognizing any of those crimes that he's facing charges for, and then it will take a long time, right, for this trial to happen.
When is the next date then? Or when will we know if this is definitely going to trial? When the judge, says, okay, yes, I see this evidence, or I say this thing should go to trial. When will that happen?
We don't know for sure. I estimate like maybe in the next 60 days, right? I'm just trying to think if I would be in the prosecutor's shoes, right? What it would be the best move in that regard. So that's why I'm estimating like in the next 60 days. But by law, he can just keep them, and if, of course, the judge decides to and approves the prosecutor's request, they can keep them for another 180 days in the house arrest, in which it will be still in the investigation phase. So the investigation phase can just go on, for another 6 months, 5, 6 months, which it is crazy to think of if you think about it. But yeah, it's different, totally different.
So Andrew Tate just stands in his apartment, pacing back and forth for possibly 6 more months while the prosecutors continue the investigation. That just seems, wow. I mean, it's better than being in jail, I guess, being on house arrest. You have the comforts of home. But things can happen in the United States too. I mean, there are times people can demand a speedy trial in the United States where they basically said, nope, we're going to trial, or they can waive that right and waive the time constraints and then give their attorneys more time to prepare. So is that an option in Romania?
Yeah, they have actually. So again, if the case is moved to the trial, they have the option to go for a fast trial, but it implies that they will have to recognize the crimes that they are facing. So I don't think that will be the case, given his response and his attitude so far. And that's why I'm saying it will go on for like 1 to 3 years. Now, I think in terms of the next point of interest when it comes to the date, right? It should be at the end of this month when the house arrest extension will expire. Again, what will happen is the prosecutor will go forward to the judge once again, and he will propose one of those three following measures: move them back into arrest, like proper arrest in prison; two, prolong the house arrest; or three, release them on pretrial conditional release, which implies that they will have to go to the police station like once or twice per week, and they will have to sign some papers so that they show that they didn't leave the country. And of course, they are not allowed to leave the country. So it's either one of those two. Oh, three, sorry.
Well, Stefan Loredan, we'll be keeping a close eye on it, and we know you will too. Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar podcast. You can download and listen to Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Angenette Levy, and I will see you next time.